Australia. Sunshine, beach, summer, and the occasional drunk guy walking down the street at 11 AM. It is a pretty country with nice people, beautiful nature, and hungry sharks that will attack you if you are the unlucky one in 10 million. Welcome to Caged in 3, a movie about mundane characters encountering the most basic threat in the waters of Australia. Let's go. We start out on the west coast of the USA, where three friends plan a trip to Australia. The goal is to meet their cousin in Sydney, fly over to Adelaide, and prepare for a cage dive to hopefully encounter a great white shark. The characters are the brothers Jeff and Josh, and this is Megan, girlfriend of Jeff. The first 25 minutes of this movie attempts to display the relationship between the characters and fails miserably. The relationship is basically as shallow as Australian coastlines during low tide, and it honestly feels like these actors have been told to improvise for 80 minutes straight. I think a mute film would have worked better. Let me summarize the first 25 minutes for you. Jeff dates Megan, but she cheats on him with his brother Josh. Jeff doesn't know that and plans to marry her. They party, they travel, they film cringy vacation videos, and are frequently interrupted by B-roll footage pathetically kept afloat with background music trying to keep audience engagement. And then finally, after half an hour, they arrive on the dive boat, receive instructions about sharks and the dangers lying ahead, and slowly get ready to enter the cage. The small introduction video, titled "How to Beat Sharks," is actually pretty informative. Avoid swimming at night, dawn or dusk. Also, avoid swimming on your own if possible. Keep yourself around others. Don't cause sudden movements, as you will be seen as a distressed fish in the eyes of a shark. The staff then starts attracting sharks by waving pieces of meat inside the water. Now, I guess that is how it's done, but that's kind of silly, isn't it? I mean, isn't attracting sharks to a boat, obviously operated by human beings, a bad idea? Doesn't that tell the sharks they get free food whenever there is a boat and therefore humans nearby? Sure, there are only about 10 to 20 shark attacks per year occurring in Australia, but luring these creatures to human beings with chunks of meat sure doesn't help that statistics, does it? Anyway, as the sharks gather and our friends hop into the cage, they are slowly let down and are surrounded by sharks. They enjoy the sight as long as they can, and after about 2 minutes of mute, chaotic camera movements that imitates pretty well what it's like to be on a shitty boat in the middle of the ocean, the characters resurface again and are just able to spot a giant random wave sweeping over the ship, causing it to break apart. Not only are you now trapped in the middle of the ocean, which sucks, but you're also surrounded by dozens of sharks looking for food around here. The bloody meat they use to attract them can be smelled by them up to a quarter mile away. That is roughly 400 meters. That's quite far. So every shark in a radius of 400 meters thinks where our characters are is food. Next to hypothermia, the lack of food and water, and degrading morals, the last thing you want to fight are bloodthirsty sharks lurking beneath you in places that you can't even see. Naturally, at first, chaos breaks out. A few crew members don't resurface again, and others are dead already, probably killed by flying objects after the boat has been turned over. Now, with dozens of sharks around you, a few dead bodies might not be the worst thing to have around you. At least they can now target people that don't care anymore what will happen to them, giving you, at least in theory, more time until you are on the menu. Researching how to avoid shark attacks is actually a pretty fun thing to do. I doubt that these characters have done that, which is actually stupid if you plan to swim with any, but I have. So, one interesting thing to do is avoid wearing shiny objects, not because sharks enjoy precious metals, but because the shininess could be mistaken as fish scales. So if the characters wore any rings, necklaces, bracelets, or similar stuff, remove them. I personally doubt that this will make a huge difference, but doing whatever you can will help to calm you down, which is very important in every survival scenario. Let me quote one shark expert here. Quote, "Humans, apes, dogs, and cats all have paws and hands. If we want to explore something, we pick it up and we touch it, we feel it, we put it to our nose. A shark has got no paws or hands, so if it wants to explore something, the only capability it's got is to put it in its mouth. That is why we often get exploratory bites which don't result in death and sometimes don't even result in serious injury." End quote. Which makes an awful lot of sense, right? A few short minutes after their ship sank, leaving back a dozen people, of which for some reason only 3 tourists survived, a yacht appears just a few hundred meters away. Now, it is a mystery to me how A, that ship doesn't appear to have faced the same 20-meter wave 5 minutes ago, and how B, it somehow overlooks the shipwreck and all the floating debris, including dead bodies and 3 screaming Americans in the water. I mean, there is nothing else to see for miles in every direction apart from them. Moments later, the boat has disappeared and the group is being surrounded by great white sharks. That is scary and you are probably about to die. However, it is worth knowing that sharks are ambush hunters. This means they want to attack you when you ain't looking. Meaning, if you can maintain eye contact with them, you're less likely to be attacked. If they do start behaving aggressively though, and do attack, then the best and really only thing left for you to do is make yourself as big as possible. Our characters would do well in taking turns diving down and fixate the sharks with their eyes. If 20 seconds worth of oxygen is your max capacity, then you would have 40 seconds between each turn, which is pretty doable if you ask me, especially when your life depends on it. They also seem to have their dive goggles with them still. This is pretty valuable here. I wonder why none of them bothers to wear them. Being in the middle of a not-so-calm ocean and slowly running out of energy, no doubt the constant salt water being swept into your eyes will make things even more exhausting. Also, you couldn't possibly take on a shark without wearing them, so that's a pretty big error there. In fact, let us have a brief look at some of the most famous survival stories of people stranded in the open sea. The arguably most famous one occurring to Salvador Alvarenga and Ezequiel Cordoba. Only the former survived. They were lost at sea for 438 days. After 4 months, Ezequiel apparently gave up and stopped consuming the birds, turtles, and other creatures they would hunt and died shortly after. Another incident in 2010 involved 3 boys trying to sail from one Pacific island to the next one. It was an everyday thing for the boys who all were very used to the sea and traversing it. But this time they got into a storm, went adrift and lost orientation almost immediately. They would drift through the Pacific for 50 days, covering 500 miles, and were eventually rescued by a bunch of fishermen that brought them back to a hospital in Fiji. Now, both these stories and all others I found involved inflatable life rafts or dysfunctional fisher boats, a luxury our characters don't have. So what can you do if the only thing you have while being stranded in the open sea is your body? Well, having to constantly flex your muscles to maintain balance is very taxing. I mean, we all know that. And the more energy you lose, the quicker you will either drown, starve, or freeze to death. So the best way to keep your energy levels afloat, and yourself, is to use a dead man technique, perfect for non-calm water conditions. For this, you float completely relaxed on your belly while holding your breath. Breathe whenever necessary. This way you will use the least amount of energy and will also avoid unnecessary movements that could attract sharks. In order to not drift away from your group, you could consider locking in arms or, if possible, tie yourselves together without restricting too much movement. Now, the dead man technique is legit for conserving energy in deep water. Lifeguards can confirm that. Of course, if the water is calm, you may want to reverse that position and float on your back instead for more comfort. However, with the burning sun above and the massive hole in the ozone layer in Australia, I don't know, you may want to think twice about that. Now, as hours pass by and our 3 characters are still drifting around, they come across small emergency rafts that can and will change their destiny. Now, the extra buoyance of these will suffice in keeping all of them above sea level, while none of them need to use their diminishing energy levels. Good luck right there. Now, just minutes after this, luck strikes one more time. A floating box of some sorts drifts not too far away from our characters. Jeff does the right thing and attempts to swim over, claiming that this box may contain valuable items such as water and food. And he's absolutely right. I mean, to me, this thing looks like an icebox. I could be wrong, of course. The other 2, however, start screaming at Jeff, telling him to stay with them instead of swimming away. On one hand, they're right that he will expose himself to the sharks. On the other, why the f*** wouldn't you join him? That thing ain't too far away, and if you can't gather no food items, you will absolutely die very soon. Reaching this box is the only plan they have, so abandoning that would make zero sense. Now, Jeff luckily ignores his peers and continues swimming over until a bunch of sharks appear and urge him to get back to the others. Now, I want to give props where props is due. Not the biggest fan of this movie, I think it does many things wrong. However, the sharks look very real. I have no idea how they did that, but it looks neat, not gonna lie. On another note, all three of them should have swum over to that box together. If each of them held onto the red emergency floaties in front of their bellies, with their back against the water, they could have sped through the water very efficiently if each of them would have kicked their feet back and forth. They would have reached that box in no time, and if anyone needed a break, they could just relax while the others continued kicking. The same thing happens during the night again. While they couldn't retrieve that box thingy before, they now see another bulky object floating by. They can't really see what it is, but one of them reacts quick enough to grab it, and it turns out to be an inflatable ocean raft. Hell yeah. That's a nice streak of luck, my friends, finding an inflatable ocean raft in the middle of the Pacific at night? I guess so. Once inflated, the raft also has a cover to protect against wind and rain, which I didn't know was a thing. In addition to that, there's also food stored inside. In fact, our characters now have enough food for a few days, are pretty safe from sharks beneath, and have also access to at least 2 flare guns. They dig in and, rather stupidly, use the first flare gun already. Sure, it's more visible during the night, but there will be more nights during the next few days anyway. With the food and shelter they have now, there is no need to rush things, right? Just mere hours ago, a ship crossed their path. Sure, they were not spotted, but if they had the flare gun back then, there would have been an almost 100% chance that they would have been rescued. I would keep those flare guns safe, wait until the next day, hope there's other ships or helicopters passing by, and be ready to pull the trigger. As the 2 boys are sleeping by now, Megan uses the camera and films herself for a farewell message to her parents and friends. That is rather strange, no? Your situation just got 10,000 times better in the last 20 minutes and you start to lose faith now? It's been a mere 10 hours since capsized, and from what we can see, you're doing better than hundreds of millions of people in this world right now. While she's filming herself whining, something tackles the boat. She starts screaming at the boys to check it out, then somehow Josh falls into the water, is pulled up again, and they spot an unconscious person floating nearby. All of that makes no sense at all, and the fact that there is zero light, zero camera stability, and literally nothing to see for the audience for well over 10 minutes makes this not mysterious, but downright annoying. They pull the woman into the boat and start trying to prep her up again. At the same time, Megan, still on her mission to cause an unnecessary scene, pulls out the last flare gun and attempts to use it as well. Luckily, the boys too think that is moronic and a fight breaks out. The fight causes the flare gun to go up, it gets stuck in the raft, causes it to burn down, and our characters are back in the water just like before. If I had to award a Dumbest Character of the Year award, it would no doubt go to Megan. The fight further escalates, even in the water, which prompts Josh in admitting the things he has with her, which causes Jeff to abandon them and, I guess you could say, floats away as mad as one can float away being mad. Now as he is gone, Megan is now attacked by a shark, leaving back only Josh. Now as the next day finally arrives and we can finally see something again on screen, Josh and Jeff are still arguing about the whole thing. Jeff eventually dies because of a medical condition, and Josh starts crying into the camera telling how guilty he feels about everything, before another shark arrives and kills him now as well. And that was literally this movie, my friends. Obviously, Megan's fault, no doubt about it. As you can hear from my voice, I was not a big fan of this movie, but bad stuff must exist so we can appreciate the better stuff, right? Well, thanks for watching, my friends. I'll catch you again next week, and until then, you take care.